I'm wondering if somebody can do a wellness check on my brother and his family.
I've seen a lot of bad stuff as state attorney. This was especially horrific.
The holidays are supposed to be a time of joy, togetherness, and celebration. But for one family in Florida, the 2019 holiday season brought unimaginable horror and tragedy. In a gated community built by Disney, the Todt family, Tony and Megan Todt, and their 3 young children, Alek, Tyler, and Zoe, were found murdered in their home shortly after Christmas. Who could have done something so terrible to this seemingly normal family? Why did no one notice they were missing until weeks after their deaths? In this video, we'll look at the events leading up to the Todt family murders, examine possible motives, and learn how the sole surviving member of the family, father and husband Tony Todt, was eventually brought to justice. How could a father kill his entire family in cold blood? What would drive someone to commit such a horrific crime? By exploring the background and psychology of the perpetrator, we hope to find some answers. While nothing can undo this tragedy, understanding how and why it happened may help prevent future acts of familial violence. The Todt family murders rocked the quiet, idyllic community of Celebration, Florida to its core. The town of Celebration, Florida was designed by Disney to embody a nostalgic, idyllic small-town atmosphere. When the Todt family moved there in 2017, they appeared to fit right in. Tony Todt worked as a physical therapist while his wife Megan stayed home to raise their 3 young children, Alek, Tyler, and Zoe. The couple had met in college and married in 2004 before starting their family. The Todts presented the image of a perfect, all-American family. Their kids excelled academically and were involved in music and community service. Tony was remembered as a devoted dad who volunteered coaching soccer and working with disabled youth. But behind closed doors, things were not as rosy as they seemed. Cracks were starting to show in the facade of the Todts' storybook life. While no one could have guessed it at the time, this outwardly gentle family man was hiding disturbing secrets. Within a couple years of moving to Celebration, Tony Todt's web of lies and fraud would be exposed. The revelation of his crimes would rupture the family's already strained bonds. Ultimately, it would lead to unfathomable tragedy and heartbreak for the seemingly picture-perfect Todts. No one yet realized just how severely the pressures of maintaining appearances and hiding the truth had impacted Tony. His all-American dad persona masked deeper psychological wounds from childhood. In April 2019, Tony Todt's illegal healthcare fraud scheme was exposed. Operating through his physical therapy clinic in Connecticut, Todt had been charging patients for treatment they never received. He pocketed the ill-gotten funds, using them to finance family vacations to Disney World and cover other lavish expenses. But Todt's house of cards soon came crashing down. His crimes caught up with him, leaving Todt over $100,000 in insurmountable debt. He resorted to taking out loans he couldn't repay and was slammed with multiple lawsuits. Throughout this, Todt's wife, Megan, and children seemed completely unaware of the extent of his legal and financial woes that were brewing under the surface. In addition to Tony's secret legal and financial troubles, the family faced another crisis. Since 2017, wife Megan had been battling Lyme disease. Her illness led to growing isolation and depression for Megan. The once outgoing and social Todt family began withdrawing from community activities and celebration. Neighbors didn't think much of it, assuming the Todts were just spending more time up north where their kids attended school. But in reality, Megan's health struggles were severely impacting the family dynamic behind closed doors. Her illness added strain to an already stressed household. In December 2019, things took a turn for the worse. Tony Todt stopped going back to Connecticut for work, remaining in Florida full-time with his family. Relatives grew worried about the Todts' lack of communication over the holidays. Police did a wellness check on December 29th, but got no response at the home. Alarmingly, they didn't return for 2 whole weeks, even after increasingly disturbing texts started coming from Tony's phone. The Todts' pristine facade was disintegrating rapidly, though outsiders didn't yet grasp the severity of the situation. Darkness was descending quickly upon the family behind the white picket fences. On January 13, 2020, federal agents showed up at the Todt Celebration home with an arrest warrant for Tony related to his fraud charges. Accompanying them were Osceola County Sheriff's deputies, increasingly concerned about the family's total lack of contact. The agents spotted an eviction notice on the door and piles of uncollected mail. After reaching out to the landlord for help, they finally gained entry into the disturbingly silent house. Inside, they were confronted with a horrifying scene that no one could have imagined. The entire Todt family and their dog Breezy lay dead in their beds, having been viciously stabbed and suffocated. Amongst their decomposing bodies were bottles of medication. Tony was found alive but unresponsive after overdosing in an apparent suicide attempt, having ingested a near-lethal dose of Benadryl. Shock reverberated through the community at the news. How could this tragedy happen in their idyllic neighborhood? What would drive a father to annihilate his entire family? Following his arrest, Tony Todt's story about the murders changed repeatedly. First, he claimed Megan stabbed the kids, then attacked him. Later, he said he was saving the family from the apocalypse.
Friday night, it was supposed to be a three-step plan. So we all stay together and go up. One person separated to the other.
Where we're at right now is a very sad state. All three of your children are dead.
I know.
Your wife is dead.
I know.
You're alive.
Unfortunately.
But investigators believe the true motive was the crumbling facade of Todt's life. Ashamed of his overwhelming fraud and debt, Todt chose unfathomable violence to erase his entire family, rather than face judgment or punishment for his crimes. Todt told investigators a story about returning to the family's celebration home to look for a missing Mickey Mouse necklace belonging to his young daughter Zoe. This chilling account was likely his way of describing the night of the murders. In 2022, almost 2 years after the crimes, Anthony Todt was sentenced for the horrific murders of his wife and 3 children. He received 4 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole, 1 for each family member killed. In a noteworthy move, an additional year was added to Todt's sentence for animal cruelty charges related to the murder of the family dog, Breezy. This decision sent a message that killing a pet is an additional serious offense worthy of extra punishment. Anthony Todt will spend the rest of his life locked away in prison for these unspeakable crimes that destroyed an entire family and left a community reeling. Justice came too late for Megan, Alek, Tyler, Zoe, and Breezy, but their loved ones can find some closure in Todt's sentences. His secretly troubled life clashed with the perfect family image, ultimately driving Todt to slaughter them all in cold blood. The murders likely also stemmed from deep psychological wounds in Tony's childhood. Back in 1980, when Tony was just 4 years old, his own father had arranged an attack on Tony's mother, who barely survived. Witnessing his mom nearly murdered likely caused lifelong trauma for young Tony. As an adult, his failures as a father and provider probably triggered these old psychological wounds. So while only Tony fully understands what drove him to slaughter his family, investigators believe his concealed childhood trauma combined with shame over his current shortcomings as a patriarch. The Todt family murders sent shockwaves through the quiet community of Celebration, Florida in January 2020. On the surface, the Todts appeared to be living an idyllic, Disney-inspired life. But when Tony Todt's web of fraud and lies collapsed, he chose an unfathomable path to escape consequences. Over 2 years later, the loss of an entire family, kids full of potential, and pets who depend on us, still provokes heartbreak and outrage. But by better understanding the origins of familial violence, we hope future tragedies can be prevented. The holidays represent togetherness, hope, and joy. For the Todts and their loved ones, we wish they could have signified a fresh start instead of a horrifying end. This case reminds us to value our families and check in on those who seem isolated. Because behind closed doors, unthinkable darkness can be quietly gathering.